Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to get into elite shape, or perhaps just make improvements to your current level of fitness, check out the MTNTOUGH digital training program. You can try it for free for 14 days, and you can see the results for yourself. The app allows users to train wherever they are with minimal equipment requirements, whether you're in the gym, or you're outdoors, or you're at home. Users can access top-tier programming that fits into their lifestyle. The MTNTOUGH app offers expertly designed progressive training plans that guide users from start to finish. These plans are tailored to build resilience, strength, and endurance over time, preventing burnout and injury. The app features self-guided and follow-along coaching videos, allowing users to be coached through every workout step by step. This helps to ensure proper form, motivation, and intensity, regardless of the user's fitness level. The MTNTOUGH app delivers training programs built for the unique physical demands of mountain athletes, including hunters, tactical professionals, and outdoor adventurers. The programs themselves are designed by seasoned strength and conditioning experts, elite athletes, and military veterans. Start your 14-day free trial today and check out the results for yourself. And be sure to use the offer code CHANGEAGENTS, and I'm looking at it as one word, at sign-up, and you can get 40% off your annual subscription. Remember, use the offer code CHANGEAGENTS at checkout.
If you sprinkle just a little bit of crime into a legitimate business, if you just deviate a little bit into, well, we'll break these laws just a little bit, there is a lot of value there. You can make a lot of money.
Yeah.
There's a lot of upside.
How can I help? How can I be useful in ending needless suffering? Do not be afraid of work that has no end.
We have to organize a social movement.
We have an opportunity to lead by example versus just talking, hot air. I think the more people in this fight, the more we grow. Eventually it could change. The people are the ones that can make the change.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Change Agents, an Ironclad original, presented by our spicy friends at Firecracker Farm. This episode is about the work of Jack Rhysider. Jack is the creator and the host of the Darknet Dairies, a podcast that delves into the world of cybersecurity, hacking, privacy, and the darker side of the internet. His episodes feature real-life stories about cybercrimes, data breaches, hacktivism, and the people involved in these activities. Probably easiest for the guest and edification for me too, if you can kind of just unpack your background to give people an idea of your experience, what it was like working for a major security operations center, what kind of stuff your job entailed, and it's just a nice entryway into the conversation about what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, sure. You ready?
Yeah, fire away, man.
I got a degree. I went to university to get a bachelor's degree in computer engineering, and that taught me a little bit about everything when it comes to computers. Like one class of Java, one class of operating systems, one class of applications. And after that, I kind of struggled finding work, but I eventually got Cisco certified, which freshened me back up into the career field. And so with the CCNA, I was able to get a job in the NOC, Network Operations Center, and this gave me exposure to a ton of clients and different sectors and different devices and everything, because I was monitoring, network environments for troubleshooting status and stuff like that. And eventually a job opened up for a security engineer, and I really didn't know anything about security at the time, but I was like, I like that term engineer. I'd like to be one of those. So I applied, and I was actually doing pretty well. So I was one of the top picks, and I came over and just really had no idea. So I switched over to like network security stuff. So CCNA security, Cisco Certified Network Security Professional, CCSP. That's what it is. And just got all sorted up and got really deep into security. And I found out that this is where I really should be. This is like my favorite place, because in the past, how I learned a little bit about everything at university when it comes to technology, all that's coming back with security. There's really no aspect of technology that doesn't have some sort of aspect of security that
Mm-hmm.
needs to be looked at there. So everything that everything was coming back, all the programming languages, the binary, the hex codes, it was all like, oh wow, I remember taking one little class on this, and now it's coming back, and it's really handy right now. So it was really nice. It felt like the perfect place for me to bring all my tech skills into one place, and then to keep an eye on it all.
When you were studying at university and you were first looking at, I'm just going to layman's terms, the back end of what's going on the devices that we're using, were you thinking about it from a security perspective at all? Or did you even recognize back then that there were vulnerabilities in what you were taking a look at?
Yeah, I definitely recognized it. I thought it was kind of, I mean, it was so long ago. It felt like that was an area for bad guys, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know who's going to work on this, but either the hackers are going to figure that stuff out, or oh, I didn't even know who else would secure it, right? But it just felt like the wrong area to focus on. Like, oh well, eventually somebody will fix all this, and we won't have these problems, so I don't really need to worry about that sort of thing. So it existed, and I saw people, hacking and stuff on IRC and stuff back in those days, but I just thought maybe that was a fad, but little did I know it was just the beginning.
Yeah. So, of course, for me, and probably for most people, our lens on the world is probably through what we consume, in a digital medium, TV and movies. When I think like a security operations center, I imagine this huge glass enclosed bubble with TVs everywhere. And you guys are like real time tracking code and reverse engineering stuff. Please tell me that that's exactly what it was like.
Yeah, it was exactly like that. It was even made even more special because they had the executive briefing center right next to it, right? And so when we were bringing on new clients, they would love to open the drapes, right, and show like, here's our network operations center. And so they made it look really nice, so it would be a real selling point for our clients as well.
No
And
way.
yeah, it had all the TVs and monitors. Every desk had like multiple screens.
So what does an actual day in the life look like for somebody working in that type of environment?
A network operations center technician is going to keep their eyes on the screen to monitor for alerts. And when an alert comes up, pretty much their job is to verify that that alert is true somehow with the tools, and then notify the team that needs to be taking a look at this, right?
Mhm.
So if a network goes down in a certain um, office or building, well, okay, how do we verify that? We can call the building and say, hey, is your network down? Yes, okay, all right. Well, we're gonna start working on it. And so now they might call the ISP and say, hey, what's up? The network's down here. Or an engineer and say, can you troubleshoot this? No, I can't. It's down. How am I supposed to just troubleshoot? It's in another city. So you just really connect the people who need to be taking care of this. You're the first person to notice these faults, and then you're the first to tell someone, hey, take a look at this fault. And so that could be a big range, right? We could
Yeah.
be looking at network up-down status. We could be looking at server health. We could be looking at whether the telephones are working or ATM machines. There's just whatever you can monitor. It could be put into a network operations center so that somebody can keep their eyes on it and make sure everything's working properly. It could just be an application.
Are there days where everything is actually working properly, or there's always work for somebody in the operations center?
Yeah, there's never a quiet day. There's always great. There's always something going on.
That's what I figured. I mean, obviously we live in an electronically, I would say controlled world at this point. I mean, it is truly people's entryway to almost everything. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that it's keeping you guys on your toes. When did you switch from that or have the idea to start a podcast and go with the Darknet Dairies?
I think at some point I was always like a helping kind of person. Like, playing video games. I was a helper in the video game. At work, I was like in teach people and help people and write documentation. And so I was like, how can I help more people do more stuff? And that's when I started a blog. And the blog was pretty much all of my lessons learned at work and how to troubleshoot this and what happens when you see this error and all these kind of things, tools that we all use and errors that we all see, but maybe it wasn't documented very well on when you start searching Google. And I also wanted my own notes. So when I see this again, so I put together this blog, and that started to gain some attention. Not a lot. It's just like, when you're troubleshooting something and you Google it and people arrive and thanks for the help, and then they're gone. They don't really come to look at more than that. So it was nice to see people coming and getting some of this, and that really helped me explain maybe complex topics more simply as well, right? So I know when people come, they just want the answer so they can bug out. And I don't want to put this long, you've seen these cooking blogs where it's like,
Oh God,
it's my
yes.
grandma's recipe and we always did around the big table. No, forget that. Here, is this the error you have? Here's the solution. Boom, done.
Yeah.
We don't need any more. And so it was really nice trying to figure out exactly how to break down this problem as simple as I can too, right? So some textbooks might give you a problem and they're like, okay, we've got this network problem and here are all the nodes and stuff. And I'm like, why are you giving us like 10 nodes in this problem when really the problem is between this host and this host? Like you're overcomplicating the whole problem here. You don't need to do that. So it really helped me explain things like real complex topics in a simple way. And that, I think, is what really helped get to the next level, right? Which is to podcast about this. And so then I started listening to a lot of podcasts about cybersecurity, and I was really fascinated by the way they were talking and how to use different things. Like it's its own language, cybersecurity, right? You learn how to say acronyms and conjugate things that don't are just made up a week ago or something. It's just a strange language. And so I was just learning that. And at the same time, I was really fascinated with podcasts like Radiolab and This American Life and 99% Invisible and stuff like this. And I thought, well, the cybersecurity world is full of drama and crazy stories. How come somebody isn't bringing these stories to life on a podcast? And I asked a few people like, hey, I'd like to hear you, like a couple of security podcasters. I'd like to hear you kind of go back and let's revisit Stuxnet now that we know all about it, right? Let's hear soup to nuts, the whole story. And they didn't quite understand, like, well, I don't, why would I want to go visit a 5-year-old story? And I said, well, because I think it's finally worth telling. And I think that's kind of what I am like deep down is a slow news junkie. I like to wait until all the questions are answered, and then I think that story is ripe to tell. Because when we have like cutting, breaking news, there's just too many questions that we have unanswered, and there's not much really to talk about. And so I really like waiting until maybe they've caught the person, and now we have all the answers and how they got in or whatever the story is. And well, I think that is now time to tell the news.
Yeah.
So that's what I focused on, is these older stories that we have all the details.
Yeah.
And I put together that as my podcast.
Well, I think there's a striking correlation between breaking news and inaccuracy. It's especially in the modern era where, I mean, pretty much anybody, I guess, could be a journalist with their own phone. Whether they would call themselves that is another topic for discussion. But yeah, the earlier it's breaking, the less likely I have found it is to be true. So I like the idea of revisiting things in the past and actually digesting at a much deeper level and explaining what's going on. Yeah. And so, I mean, you do a lot of reporting on criminal activity on the internet, which after starting this show a few years ago, I was going to say shocked. I just don't think I was prepared for the number of people that have either a personal story or they work professionally dealing with scams of one type or the other. But I will say this, you're the first person that I've encountered that, and for the people who are audio only, they may not recognize that or realize that you have your face obscured, which I appreciate because I think I understand why. But given the fact that you report on crime, is that why you choose to obscure your face?
That's part of it. I think privacy is just my number one thing.
Yeah.
That I feel so after doing over 100 episodes on just all this crime and data breaches and stuff like that, I feel like people ask me, do you get like worn down or depressed over like just the endless sad problems that are happening in the cybersecurity world? And I think the thing that has hit me the most, that's changed me the most, is just being empowered to do something myself about this. And because you want to still operate in the world, but how do you operate in a world where you know your data is going to be exposed like again and again and again and again because of data breaches or data brokers selling your stuff or whatever? And so to me, the biggest thing I have in my tool belt is to not give my data to whoever to whoever asks for it,
Yep.
and keep it private. And I want to sort of lead by example there as well. So it's like, listen, I could still become someone with a a well-known name in some circles at least, and popular, but just keep my face off the screen and stay private as possible. So yeah, I think privacy is very crucial for kind of living in a free society as well. The more you're spied on, the less free you feel like you can talk. And I just don't like seeing my data get exposed again and again and again and again. So I use fake names and burner credit cards and burner cell phone numbers everywhere I go
Yeah.
to avoid getting my, because if that stuff gets in a data breach, I don't care because it's just was made for that specific purpose or whatever.
You know,
And that to me is my like empowering experience of this is how I can avoid the data breach myself because
yeah.
I didn't put my data in there.
Ladies and gentlemen, today's episode is brought to you by Firecracker Farms. A question for you, perhaps it's too personal. Do you like things hot? I'm talking about your food. I'm actually talking about seasoning, in this case, specifically salt. Specifically, Firecracker Farm hot salt. I never thought salt could be, I guess the word would be dynamic. So Firecracker Farms, they're made with Ghost, Scorpion, and Carolina Reaper peppers. The flavor is ridiculously delicious, and everything you put it on gets better. It isn't too hot. If you're familiar with peppers, those 3 that I listed, they're spicy, but this is a choose your own adventure. The first time that I tried this salt, I put it on a ribeye steak, my personal favorite. I didn't really know what to expect because I've salted steaks many times before, but holy cow, this is the only thing I have put on any steak that I have made since that day. Firecracker Farm is a very small family brand. It's just the founder, Alex, and his family going all in on a great product and supporting great causes, like Operation 300 and the Pipe Hitter Foundation, with a percentage of every sale. Alex has been legitimately bugging me to be a sponsor of Change Agents for a while now. And here's what I can wholeheartedly say. His product is, in fact, awesome. It's not as good as you might think it is, it's better. So go get some while you can at firecracker.farm. Use code Ironclad to get 15% off your first order at firecracker.farm. You know, it's interesting you bring up privacy. It's a topic of conversation that I've heard, I think, gaining momentum a little bit. I would say, and I'm going to put myself in this category. For a long time, I didn't pay attention at all to, I'll call it my digital signature. You know, I check the boxes on social media platforms and, you know, if there's somebody out there who did read the fine print, reach out to me because I'm yet to find somebody who actually did. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing now, again, hosting the show and finding out about organizations that all they do is scrape social media and then sell your mugshot, you know, your digital mugshot to law enforcement. So you're constantly in a lineup without knowing about it. And it's wild. For the average person, how possible do you think privacy actually is without taking steps like burner cell phone numbers or burner credit cards?
Yeah, I mean, I think the average person is interesting because, you know, growing up with the computers of my life, the average person wasn't online. They just weren't doing things. And then the average person who was online were doing things like running their own email servers and stuff like that to get email going. And so things have changed where it's become a lot easier to have your online life or to come online, and all these apps are real easy, and your phone and your computer is easy to use. And so the average person is jumping in because of this easy to use aspect. But I think what's following in there is that it's easy to adopt some of these more private options, right? So Signal is a great replacement for text messaging. Um, mm, and it does end-to-end encryption, and it just has all the same features as it would any other messaging app you have, but it's much more private, as well as Proton Mail or yeah, end-to-end encryption emails. So your email functionality is exactly the same as it was before, but now you're using a more private email provider, and really the trade-offs are almost negligible. You don't see much. So any downside, and and so yeah, I think swapping for some of these easier ones is pretty easy today for the average person to do. But I think the biggest thing that we have to be cautious of is just not putting our lives online, where we're putting all our photos of our kids or our loved ones or our family trips or whatever the case is, and explaining all these things that are going on, and 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 so much more. Like our lives are becoming more transparent.
Yeah.
Where I think the most amount of data gotten from us is the stuff that we're just willingly sharing, and that I think is kind of the mindset that has to change in order for it to really make a change for most people.
I'm going to ask you about a particular product, and I don't want to, if this is not an endorsement of that product. I just recently had a conversation with somebody about this, and I'm just curious if you've heard about it. But have you heard about the unplugged phone?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on not that necessarily that device, but a device like that? And my limited understanding is it helps you anonymize your information online. Is that also, and again, there's a cost that comes with that, and I don't understand, if you're going to be doing calls, I don't know if there's encryption or not, but just the general concept of something like that, do you think it would help as well?
I personally use the Graphene operating system.
Okay.
And this is a fork of Android, but it takes all of Google out of it, right? So it just deletes Google services and Google Play Store and Google everything. And because Google is quite a magnet for your data, it just wants to suck it all up. And so if we can keep Google out of our lives, that also, I think it helps, because now we don't have some big company just knowing everything about us. That phone you mentioned in particular, I haven't experienced, but the idea is that there are a lot of devices and apps in the world that are promising a lot of things, such as, wonderful security or privacy and stuff like that. But I always stand back and I let time test it for a while and see how maybe is some of this stuff open source, where we can review the code, and what do auditors think about it, and how does it get, just stress tested by the world before I jump into it. Because we've had situations where there are sort of quote unquote privacy apps or off-grid apps or whatever that promise this stuff, but they were actually honeypots ran by the FBI or something like that. Right?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that later in the episode. Actually, there's a great example of that.
Right. So it's like, wait a minute. I hear you're saying that there's a lot of nice stuff about this, but where are the logs stored and who's operating this and all this kind of stuff. And if the more we get to know who these people are, or the board, and there's a level of trust there that kind of has to be seen as well, of who's running this stuff. Yeah, it's tough to know the whole landscape and environment of what to trust and what not to trust.
There's also the issue of people, even if, let's say, like a device like that exists, people using it improperly or irresponsibly can also deviate all the benefits that could come from that as well. So they have something that has the ability to be like that, and then we can't get out of our social media mindset and world, like you had talked about, publishing everything about your life and being transparent kind of defeats the purpose in the first place.
Yeah, 100%. If you go on tour and on a VPN and do all the right steps, but then you're just like, "Hi, I'm Jack from this town."
Totally defeats
all
the
this
purpose.
Stuff. You just de-anonymized yourself. So you do have to take the right steps. And a lot of people joke about, "Oh, there's a padlock in the browser. It says HTTPS. It's secure, so I can do whatever I want." And I'm like, "Well, I wouldn't do anything anything you want there. It's not entirely like that."
Well,
it's one of those things that you really have to be more responsible.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Andy Stumpf.
And I'm Mike Glover.
We have a new show. It's called Focal Point. It is an Ironclad original. And on this show, we dive into the issues going on in our culture to look beyond the headlines and the talking head talking points. It's just not everything is as it appears. For a more nuanced perspective on what's actually going on.
These guys are coming in. You have no choice. This is what's going to happen, and clean up the mess.
You can subscribe to Focal Point on YouTube at This Is Ironclad or wherever you get your podcasts. I want to circle back a little bit later on to the honeypot as you described, because I think it's fascinating with the FBI. I want to give people, listeners, kind of an idea of the scope and scale of some of the stuff you've reported on for Darknet Dairies. So I may be saying this incorrectly, but one of your recent episodes, is it Exact or Exact?
I call it Exact.
Exact, okay.
I'm not exactly sure.
Pun intended, I like it. Break down that for me, if you would. And for the listener, I mean, I can give the Wavetops. It's a massive software company in Pakistan, made millions by setting up a website of made up college universities and then selling fake online classes and diplomas. And I'll hand it off to you, man, because this stuff to me is fascinating.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They would create websites that look like colleges and even create like accredited bodies to say this is an accredited school, but really they just made up that accredited body and would be very aggressive with phone calls and finding people on LinkedIn who are posting their resume or whatever. And like, you know what you're missing is this. If we can get you certified in that or a degree in that pretty quickly. And yeah, it was weird because they came off as a legitimate school and would get you registered and all this sort of thing. But then you could like fast track it. If you pay a little bit more, you could just graduate in a week or a month or something like that. Right?
That's what I'm talking about.
Instead of actually going through the courses. So it looked like there was a course there, but you could, and so it kind of gave the sense of like the students were the ones cheating and not so much the school, because it's like, ooh, I could just click next on all the coursework, and that gave me an A. Wow, that was great. I didn't realize how school was so easy or something, right?
Yeah.
And so you got this false sense of like, oh, it's not, you're not quite sure. Did I cheat at them or did they cheat me? And who's robbing who here and stuff like that. So you ended up paying for a degree, and then even the more shady stuff starts happening, right? So they'll give your phone number to like the person in the desk next to them, and that person will act like they're the police, like, hey, we're the police and we found out you just bought a fake degree. You didn't, or your degree isn't licensed in your country. You need to pay this licensing fee in order for us to not come after you or something like that. And so then they just start like extorting them for even more money, because they know these people wanted their degree and they went to it and went through the process and paid for it. And so, it's just like you got to renew it, and we're going to take it away because you didn't finish these other courses. And so they just keep adding more and more money onto the whole racket, because once you're on the hook for a little, they can try to milk you for everything.
So layers on top of layers in the scam. Damn. Yeah.
And there's multiple teams working on this. Like, it is one of a huge software company in Pakistan, because they are making all these websites and stuff for these schools, and so there are developers working for them, and it's quite a profitable company. And yeah, I think enough evidence came forward to call the police on them and get class action lawsuit. That's, I guess, my favorite part of the whole story is a class action lawsuit was created here in the United States. And they tried to bring in these people from Pakistan, the Exact company, to say, hey, you have to defend yourself, but they don't want to. So what they do is they bring in, they paid another guy to come in and say, oh yeah, it was me who made that. I'm unaffiliated with Exact at all. I just made it for fun. Sorry if you thought it was like a scammy thing or whatever. And so they said, oh, okay, since you're the guy who made it, then you're guilty. And well, they never found him because he just kind of went into hiding in Pakistan. And so some other guy took the fall for this whole company. And it's just so ridiculous, because it's like there was a very little evidence brought forth on why he was the one and all this stuff. So they're just they're wildcats, those exact guys. They're always somehow just a step ahead and getting out of trouble when they're in the most trouble.
I'm assuming, based on what you described, that they're probably still doing what they do over in Pakistan.
Perhaps. And I think what I've just noticed over time as well is, you know, if you sprinkle just a little bit of crime into a legitimate business, if you just deviate a little bit into, well, we'll break these laws just a little bit. There is a lot of value there. You can make a lot of money.
Yeah.
There's a lot of upside, but it is a riskier endeavor. And so, yeah, you know, a similar one is when I think somebody hacked into a Newswire's website to get the latest news that was going to be released in order to make their stock bets before the public knew about it. So they were able to hack into the news sites just before the news would be released.
Interesting.
So they could get a leg up on the stock market.
Yeah.
And again, it's just one of those things of just a little bit of crime thrown in allows you to get a big reward from it.
Well, when Exact was exposed, did anything change for the company in Pakistan? Did anything happen with the leadership, or did, like you said, did they find these individuals willing to take the fall and just continue on?
Yeah, well, they did find the leadership, and they arrested 27 people and brought them to court, and the judge threw all their cases out. So no, none of these people are guilty. And so they found out that the judge was getting paid and bribed to just release them. So they had to rearrest everyone and get that judge thrown out because that judge was corrupt. And again, at this point, there's all kinds of new situations where things were changed. I think it's very difficult to follow the stories in some of these other countries, but I think there was some jail time for some of the executives. But it does look like the company is still operational, which is very strange.
Do you have any idea the scope and scale here in the U.S. of the number of people that got degrees from that organization?
In the U.S., I don't know how much it was targeted. I think the U.K. and Middle East is where a lot of these degrees were purchased from.
Okay.
And I did hear about some Canadians doing it too, getting it too. I guess there were some people in the U.S. So I think there were probably tens of thousands of people that perhaps in the U.S. and maybe 1 million in the world.
That is an insane number. 1 million in the world, which again, small in totality to the overall population. But that's a huge enterprise and organization behind the scenes that's allowing that to be sold. That's crazy.
Yeah, they were very aggressive at their sales pitches and marketing.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked about this a little bit before, or you mentioned it before. You know, governments, law enforcement using technology for security. A recent episode you did was on Anom, which is essentially a phone that was designed to be used by criminals because it hides data. And there's obvious benefits for, you know, people who are going to participate in criminal activity. They want to hide their data. Do you have any idea how big that Anom usage became in the criminal underworld? And then we can kind of talk about the peeling the onion back and surprise, maybe the government was behind it.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact number of phones that were sold, but yeah, it's got into the hands of some criminals in Australia at the beginning, and they liked it. There was some cool features in it. So I even like these features because I'm a privacy phone kind of guy. So I'm like, wow, these are cool features. So one of them was the phone itself is has these sort of decoy apps on the front of it, right? So it just looks like Candy Crush and TikTok or whatever apps you have installed. Looks very normal. And there's just nothing special about this phone. But if you open the calculator and you type in a certain code into the calculator, you then get access to the hidden communication apps, right?
Okay.
And so that was a nice, you know, if your spouse is looking through your phone to try to figure out, like, oh, what are they talking about? And they're not going to look at the calculator to see what's going on in there, right? So I like these hidden aspects to it.
Okay.
And so, yeah, the criminals really like this. There were a lot of cool features in there, and it started spreading. So Australia liked it, and then I think Sweden got into it. And again, it was made for criminals, so it's specifically criminals selling it to criminals as well, right? So the distributor of these phones would find a criminal person who was selling things and say, "Hey, I've got these phones. Can you check it out and sell them?" And so it was specifically targeted for that. You would never see it in a store or something like that. And so yeah, the criminals in Sweden liked it, and it grew over into Netherlands and a lot of Europe. Some of the Dubai criminals were using it as well. And and yes, it eventually got it. A few of them landed in the U.S. Not it wasn't big in the U.S., but there were definitely some criminals in the U.S. using it.
And then the reveal, right? So Anom was created by a company called Phantom Secure, which I love some of these names for companies or programs and how they were created. But the big reveal seems to be that it was actually the FBI who are the makers of this phone. And can you just kind of unpack how that unraveled and how the two were tied together?
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing to me because we don't know the exact details here, but it was created by a criminal for criminals, right?
Yep.
And I think what happened is that guy's lawyer said, "Hey, you know what would be really nice is when all this stuff goes down to have some sort of get out of jail free card. So maybe what you should do is talk to the police to give them access to all this so that if you do get in trouble, the police will be happy that they had access to this." And so I think there was some sort of agreement like that. But then on top of that, the FBI and Australian Federal Police were paying a licensing fee or paying access to this sort of thing, which I think ended up making it so that the phone can even be, like it was funding the phone's operation, right? So we can't really work very well unless we get some money. So can you send us some money? Oh yeah, sure. And so they were actually funding this startup. And then we're just like doing anything that the FBI was asking. So the FBI is like, well, we want this, these features and these things added in as well with like GPS and camera on, that whatever they can get. And so this stuff was, it was like funded and operated and kind of ran by the FBI by the end. And yeah, the police of the world could see in these messages, and it was end-to-end encrypted, but it was sort of like a copy of every message was also sent to the police or a central database as well. So if you were to look in transit, this stuff looks totally encrypted, but you just couldn't tell that it was also being sent to a third party.
How did it eventually unwind and the authorities' involvement in this become public?
Yeah, I think the stuff that the authorities were seeing was just becoming more and more severe, right? So
Yeah.
threats to life, I think is probably the highest thing that they were seeing, right? So when they were seeing people plotting murders, and it was like, well, we gotta stop this. And eventually it's like, well, there's enough of this plotting going on. Maybe we should stop it all at once. And yeah, I think it just got so big that they're like, we should go and make like 1,000 arrests. And the thing is if you're starting to make arrest after arrest after arrest of everyone who has these Anom phones, it does become suspicious of like, wait, every single person who has one of these Anom phones got arrested. What's going on?
Yep.
So they kind of banked it and waited for a while without doing. I mean, they did some arrests, but they tried to make it look like, oh no, we got this data from somewhere else, and they were lying about how they collected the evidence and stuff. They weren't being transparent about, yeah, we were snooping on your phone, and so yeah, I think once they had just a lot of stuff to do, a lot of arrests to make, that they just picked a day and they coordinated it with all the law enforcement around the world. And it started with Australia being the beginning of the day, and they did like a mass arrest of a bunch of people, and then it just moved over to Europe, and they arrested a whole bunch of criminals, and Middle East arrested, and then the U.S. Arrested as well. And then they came out and they said, yeah, we were able to conduct this worldwide takedown of criminal circles and underground people around the world because we had access to the Anom phones.
And then
that was a shock. It's just a total shock.
And then the Anom phone was dead, and probably the people not arrested were looking for the deepest hole they could throw their phone into that day.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this is one of those things where I was telling you earlier, I don't necessarily trust these new phones that come on the market or whatever, because I don't know who's running it. And there are apps and ways to do the same thing that Anom was doing, but they're more trusted and secure. So like Signal is a great end-to-end encryption messaging app that the people at Signal cannot read your messages, even if they had a subpoena or wanted to or anything at all. A gun was held to their head, they cannot read your messages, right?
Yeah.
And so this is to me the gold standard on what we should be doing for communication to keep things private so that no one's able to see. And yeah, so if we can audit that code and we can see how that works, then that to me is great, because there's always someone taking a look at Signal to see if there's anything wacky going on there. But maybe some of these newer stuff, there's not someone watching it to audit it, you know?
What's going on, everyone? This episode is also brought to you by Allegiance Gold. Gold prices have surged, reaching nearly $2,500, a 20% increase in under a year. With traditional investments under scrutiny, gold and other precious metals have become attractive alternatives. The rise in gold prices reflects growing skepticism towards conventional investments and highlights its stability. Notably, even banks are increasing their gold reserves, underlying its lasting value. Gold isn't just a short-term play, it's a long-term strategy for financial security and growth. Whether you're an experienced investor or just starting, gold should be a part of your investment portfolio. Start securing your financial future with Allegiance Gold, a trusted leader in precious metals with top ratings from TrustLink and an A+ accreditation from the Better Business Bureau. Allegiance Gold can help you protect your IRA or 401k with physical gold and silver, or delivers precious metals securely to your doorstep. If that sounds interesting to you and you go to protectwithandy.com today, listeners will get an exclusive lowest price on the market for select gold bars. That is protectwithandy.com, or you can call 844-790-9191 to talk to an account representative.
How can a layperson who is interested in privacy, is there any way for somebody without a deep technological understanding to verify or validate the claims? And again, as an example, the unplugged phone, because it's the only one I know off the top of my head, not an endorsement for the product and almost nothing about it. But for somebody, you know, they have a website, it makes claims of what the phone is able to do. How can an average person validate those?
Yeah, it's really difficult to navigate. I mean, it's hard even for me to know what is going on behind the scenes. Like, for instance, VPNs, right? There's a million options for VPNs. I like VPNs. I think they're great. It keeps your ISP from seeing what you're doing. And so how do we pick a VPN? Well, it's very difficult because we don't know how much logs they're storing or what data they have on you. And of course, you don't let your ISP see what you're doing, but now you're letting a VPN provider see what you're doing. And so how much are they collecting off you and what's going on there? And in what countries do they operate? Because if they operate in the US, then a US subpoena can then expose all your logs and data. You have to operate by the US laws.
Mm-hmm.
And so you might want, or even in any of the Five Eyes countries, so you might want to pick a VPN that's outside that. And now we're getting, and even more crazy territory of like finding a foreign place. This is why I like Proton, because they're in Switzerland, and so they're a little bit. It takes extra effort for U.S. subpoenas to get over there, and again, they operate in such a way that they can't see your data if they wanted to. Yeah, it's difficult to navigate even for me, but what I rely on is other people who do this research, and then see what products they recommend or what stuff's going on there. And I think the privacy space is getting bigger and bigger, where there's more documents about this and articles and stuff like that. One person in particular I really like is Michael Bazzell. He writes the book Extreme Privacy, and it's really helped me navigate this. And Naomi Brockwell is another one that's doing great work in this space with her YouTube channel, MBTV.
You mentioned that Proton Mail was based in Switzerland. Just out of curiosity, where is Signal based?
I think it's US based.
But they just, the way that they have it set up, they can literally not look into the messages themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's end-to-end encrypted, and it's nice that bigger companies are adopting this, right? So you can enable that in iMessage. So Apple's allowing for that as well. The Google Messenger allows for end-to-end encryption for RCS, SMS messages, basically. And some other apps are doing it as well. And so it's really nice to see it just springing up everywhere, the end-to-end encryption.
So you've done some episodes as well on the NSA and government. And I'm curious, in your opinion, a well-known name, obviously being Edward Snowden and what he revealed about the NSA's surveillance, I would say not only efforts, but abilities, I think shock people, to include myself. How much personal data do you think that the NSA has access to when it comes to their own citizens?
Well, they'll tell you that the FISA rules are that we cannot target our own citizens. And so they'll tell you that they don't target U.S. civilians, and it's only foreign entities that they're targeting. However, because of what Snowden has revealed, we see that they do have quite a number of monitoring capabilities within the U.S. And I think because of the Patriot Act, they have been able to, without much evidence, claim somebody is terrorist or working on some terrorist plot, and then put their attention on them, right? So they'll tell you that they have to get a permission to do any sort of spying on anyone, and it's not just whoever they want. And it's nice to believe that, but then we hear stories about like Lovint, for example, where an NSA operative was using some of the nation states' tools to spy on their love interests, right? So it's like, wait a minute, this was not approved by any court order or whatever like that. And so you have people, I mean, just at that level, misusing some of the tools that they have access to. But then, you know, what other things are conducted without proper authorization or verification or whatever? And I think that there's quite a bit of stuff. And the other thing is that I think we've also seen kind of a shift between what the NSA is capable of, what they're building, what they're logging, versus what a contractor is capable of and what they're building and what they're logging, right? And so there's been some NSA agents who are creating amazing exploits and amazing malware, but then only getting paid like, you know, government salary, while an exploit developer that's a contractor was getting paid an enormous amount. And so some of these NSA agents were quitting the agency and creating their own malware companies and getting paid way more for doing the same exact work. And that, I think, started a shift, which is, well, the NSA doesn't have to do all this stuff. They can just tap someone else who can do some of this work for them at the right time. And so now we've got things like an enormous amount of data collection and spying that's going on in our phones through like ad networks and tracking pixels and stuff like this, which is just going into like just a regular company's database. But then the NSA might say, hey, we need to, you know, get geolocation on who this user is or something. And they can easily look up that from a request, right?
Yeah.
So it's become kind of splintered in a way where it's almost like for-profit hacking, and the NSA is just one of the customers. But who knows who else are the customers, right? So it's a strange thing.
Yeah, and it seems to be allowing them to operate outside of their boundaries if they want to, just due to a tax classification. Yeah, all these people aren't W-2'd. We 1099 them for their service. We don't know exactly what they're doing, but it's definitely not us.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's some things that they're getting around because of that as well. You're right.
Yeah. One of the terms I have in my show notes, and I don't know if this directly came from Snowden, but it's Pegasus. And I'm wondering if you could break down a little bit what Pegasus is.
Yeah, I don't think Snowden actually revealed this one.
Okay.
So Pegasus is a 0-click or 1-click spyware on your phone. Somebody can get this spyware on your phone without you doing much work, right? So maybe they're exploiting something within Apple's iMessage or WhatsApp and sending you a text, and without you even having to click on the text or see the text, somehow that exploits the phone. And so one thing that pops in mind that might be how it works is like when you see like a preview of a picture, like if somebody sends you a link that the iMessage app might try to show you a little thumbnail of what that link looks like, right?
Yep.
And so when it's doing that, it's executing some code to say, hey, let's go to that website and try to figure out what to display here. And that's where the exploit might exist. I don't know if for exact, but suddenly like your phone is trying to do things without you even opening it up, right? So it gets exploited, and then it sits on your phone, and it can read key message. It's a key logger. It can read all the things you type. You can open the microphone, the camera, the GPS locations. It can read all your chats. It's basically a spy inside your phone. And so who created this, and where does it come from, and what's going on there? It's created by a company called the NSO Group out of Israel, and they pretty much sell this Pegasus spyware to companies or countries around the world, governments who want to use it to fight terrorism and crime. But the problem is that the countries that they sell it to don't always have that as their primary agenda.
Yeah.
Sometimes they want to shut down civil society. So that's journalists, activists, or just competitor countries or competitor political people. And so you start seeing journalists with this stuff on their phone, and it's like, wait a minute, what's going on? How come my government is spying on me? And it becomes a scary situation.
I saw a documentary on that. I believe it was some Canadian journalists, and they were able to backtrack it. I don't know if they had declared it as being Pegasus at that time, but I'm pretty sure it's exactly what you are describing.
Yeah, there's a Canadian group called Citizen Lab that is doing quite a bit of research on this, and you were probably seeing what they were working on. Yeah, they're great for tracking Pegasus and seeing what its capabilities are, because as soon as a citizen gets some suspicious stuff going on their phone where they think it might be spied on, they can reach out to Citizen Lab, and they'll do an analysis on the phone to see what's going on. And if this is a new variant, then they can report it to the app makers and say, hey, your app is vulnerable to this, and maybe they can reverse engineer it to figure out exactly why.
How does an individual protect themselves against something like that could be texted to you and doesn't require interaction from you?
Well, that's the scary thing about the 0-click exploit, is there's really not anything you can do to defend yourself against that.
Oh, Jesus.
Because you didn't click the link and you didn't do anything, right? And so that's what makes it really tricky. And so, I think WhatsApp is suing NSO Group for misusing their application in that way. And there's some lawsuits in that way. I think just in general, it's very unlikely that you will be targeted by Pegasus, because it seems to be expensive to execute. There's like a expensive licensing agreement that they have to do, and each time that they execute it, that might cost more. And so it's very unlikely that we're going to be attacked, but it is likely that we're going to be attacked by, or unlikely it will be hit by Pegasus, but it is more likely it will be hit by a lot of other people, right? Nigerian scammers or phishers or whatever. And so we do need to be aware of what apps or what links we're clicking and what documents we're opening, right? So if someone sends us a PDF and says, here's your lab results, well, okay, it looks like it's from my doctor. Let me check it out, right? We have to be careful. Wait, hold on. Did we request some lab results from my doctor? Is this someone
Did I have my blood drawn?
Yeah. And if it's not, you don't want to be like, oh, I'm just curious. I got the wrong email from someone else. Let me look at their lab results or whatever. You gotta be careful. And if you didn't order a package and you're getting like a text message that says your package is stuck at the receiving center, click here to get more information, then just ignore those, because that just sometimes when you get a text like that, it's just to uh, plant some sort of malware on your phone or get your identity or your location or something like that. So you just have to be careful not to click things that you didn't expect or aren't looking forward to or don't recognize, and watch out with what documents you're opening or downloading from the internet.
I can give you an example of something that I get probably every week. It's an email from somebody trying to send me my invoice from PayPal as if I have already paid for something. And I don't use it for anything, so I know it's not legitimate. But then I think about my father, who's 76 and probably rushes to click on every attachment that's ever been sent to him because he doesn't know what they are. And, there's a different level of vulnerability there, but it might have the same end state depending on what they're looking for.
Yeah. Another episode I did was how a lot of people were doing tax return scams. Actually, no, it wasn't tax return. It was COVID relief funds, right? So when COVID came around, the government was giving out money to whoever needed it.
Mm-hmm. It's a generous description of it, but
yeah. So some people in Nigeria were like, well, we need it too, so we're going to pose as Americans and apply for all this. And one estimate is that $1 trillion got sent to scammers overseas.
$1 trillion.
Because there were 4 trillion appropriated for it. And the FBI, I think, confirmed 300 billion.
God.
And so it's just some estimates are at $1 trillion. So 300 billion of COVID relief funds went to hackers and scammers. And it was very simple like that, which is just, hey, I need this money for this reason, or like you're saying, it's easy to fall for things like this because we're trying to rush it. We don't know the landscape, whatever the case is, and we end up giving the wrong stuff out.
Jack, I know we're coming up to the end of our time. I'm just curious, you are, I don't know what best way to describe it. You are aware and you're sifting through a portion of the internet that I don't think most people understand. I think a lot of people, we have cell phones. I think we can understand the consumer interface, but I feel like you're looking at a lot of the things layers deeper and how things actually work, how they're connected, where the vulnerabilities are. And I'm just curious, for somebody who understands those aspects of the technology that we use, what keeps you up at night?
Well, I sleep well.
I should say, well, not literally keeps you up at night. I mean, I know some people worry about the other, like identity theft. Okay, like that's my worry. But I think that's more of, I think you can protect yourself a lot from that, just from consumer activity. You're seeing how things work behind the scenes, right? You're looking at how these things work.
If I'm going to rant about anything, here's what I'm going to rant about. I don't like, so I feel like, all right, nobody is great at protecting my data, right? Every sector, every kind of company has been breached or some sort of data has been leaked, including the government. And even recent news this week was that China had hacked into some of the U.S. government's tools in order to spy on U.S. citizens. And it's like, well, you thought our U.S. government might be the ones who are able to secure this, but time and time again, we see that they're fallible at securing our data. The OPM breach is another one. Equifax is another. And so and I'm not saying that Equifax is a government entity, but the thing is that the government forces us to give them our information and our identity to open up a bank account.
Yep.
And we can't operate without having a bank account. It's very difficult. So I have a few friends who are unbanked, but it's very hard for them to operate. So we have to have these bank accounts. And if we're putting our name, we're forced to put our name in this, and then banks aren't securing it. The government's not securing it. Our data is going to Equifax. Equifax is not securing it. this is the stuff that drives me the most crazy. Another one is medical, right? You can't go to the doctor unless you give your real name, and you're forced to do this. You can't opt out of giving your real name to the bank or giving your real name to the doctor. And so when I have to do this, I know that data is going to be leaked, sold, stolen, or something. And I feel so powerless in that situation to protect myself. There's nothing I can do to put an extra guardrail on for them to take my data seriously, and they will not. And we've seen medical providers getting data breaches all the time.
Yep.
And this is the stuff that I suppose makes me the most upset, is when my government forces me to give up my data and then is negligent at protecting it.
Yeah, and
or the companies that they force me to give it to is negligent at protecting it.
Yeah, and in your daily life, it's like you said, you might know a few people that don't use the banking system, but I can only imagine the difficulties that they have. Maybe not on the daily, but in like the macro sense of life. I mean, that's going to be challenging constantly.
Yeah, they have to pay with cash and prepaid gift cards and all this other stuff.
Closing thoughts. What do you want to leave people with now that we've identified that it kind of sucks in the world that we lived in? We're forced to play in some of these systems.
Yeah. I mean, I think nobody's going to take your privacy seriously, and you really need to do it yourself. And the more that you signal and flag that this is important to me, I will not opt into whatever it is you're asking me for this data, the more I think companies will adapt to us and start catering to the people who care about this. But the less we care about it, the less we just, oh yeah, you want my phone number here and my social, sure, no problem. And here, I'll give you all this extra information as well, my sexual orientation, how much I make, all this stuff. Like, then the more that they're going to just ask for it, because there's value for them to have a lot of data on you. And so if we just give it to them, then they'll ask for more, and they're not going to protect it. So we really need to, at some point, I think there's going to be a generation that's going to wake up and say, what did you do? You older generation, you ruined it for everyone. And I hope they save us all, because it's very difficult for us to kind of pull back from this and tell everyone we don't want a world where all our data is out there anymore.
Really hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to learn more about Jack's work, head over to darknetdiaries.com. Thanks again for listening to Change Agents, an Ironclad original presented by Firecracker Farm. We will be back next week with an all-new episode and an all-new guest. See you then.